Welcome to Ars Libri, an everyman's journey through Western literature, where we explore the literary arts book by book, reading, retelling, and reclaiming our rich heritage. Welcome back to Ars Libri. In this episode, we're going to be looking at C.S. Lewis's Space Trilogy. There are 3 books in that trilogy, and we're going to try to cover all 3 in an overview episode. And if the episode is popular and well received, we'll come back and do each book individually. And I say we because I'm joined by a special guest this time, a man named Jordan Kirk, and he is here to tell us about the books that he just read. Actually, I think you read them with your children. Jordan, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and also what led you to read these books with your family?
Well, we did Narnia last year, and I didn't read all. These felt a little different, so I didn't read all of them with my kids. But we did Narnia last year, 2024. We did all of those, and I've always been a big C.S. Lewis guy, or not always, but I'd heard about it my whole life. I was like, man, I got to dive in on this one.
Yeah. Did you read it with your family this time or just yourself?
No, these I read by myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Probably for the better. They're kind of an adult level at some of them.
I was going to say the first 2, I feel like they could, even though there's some death and there's some, hard things and,
Yeah.
violence and stuff. But the third one,
Right.
there's some things in there that are, probably are, there's some things in there that are crazy.
Yeah.
That fairy
Yeah, it's
lady,
pretty crazy.
I know.
He's actually, I think Lewis is kind of bitter, or he's at least writing like sarcastically in the third one. But Jordan, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? You're in Texas and you are a farmer. You're on some land there. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, as I was saying earlier, my family's been here. I'm 5th generation in this area since the 1870s. My grandpa, Hank
Wow.
Smith, and just outside of Lubbock, just east of Lubbock, going towards DFW, about an hour. And
Okay.
yeah, I got 5 kids, and one's almost 1 and one's almost 9. The oldest is 9. And
Okay.
another reason we do a classical Christian school there in Lubbock, and this is kind of the water we're swimming in. It's not the water I grew up swimming in,
Right.
sadly, but man, it sure is. It is awesome, and that was another thing that really attracted me
That's
to
good.
it, being in that community, good community.
That's great. Are you involved in the school in any way? Are you just, your kids go there?
Yeah, well, I actually taught physics in 2022, 23.
Okay.
I graduated Texas Tech mechanical engineering and worked as an engineer for about 7 years, and I still do some work as an engineer occasionally remote.
Okay.
But they heard about that, and they didn't have a physics teacher, and I put them through the ringer, because I didn't actually have physics in high school. I only had it in college.
Oh, wow.
And so I basically taught them college physics, because that's what I knew. And they hated me, but they all contacted me, and after they went to college, they were like, man, this is so easy, thank you so much. So
Wow.
I'm like, well, that was my goal, I guess. But other than that,
Man.
not too much. I wish I could teach every year, because it's an awesome community, great people.
It is awesome.
But it's too far away to be there every 3 days a week or whatever, because it's a collaborative 3 days on, 2 days at home.
Yeah. Man, I could tell you classical schools would, if they could, they would pay you anything to get a dad out there to teach science. They would pay anything for that if they could. It's hard to get teachers to come teach science. You have to have someone with a degree in that, and a degree in science. You can go make a lot of money elsewhere. But you turned from physics major to farming, or from science major to farming.
Yeah. My in 2019, I was working for a pump company in Lubbock as a design engineer. We did turbine pumps, and a farmer near my dad retired, and so some land came up to lease and kind of farm on the shares, and so that's what I started doing then, and been doing it. I guess this is my 7th season now as a cotton farmer.
Wow, that's awesome, man.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people choose sometimes to come out of the factory, come out of the manufacturing world, come out of the business world, and get into something that's more hands-on in land management or farming, or in some way involved with their families more intimately. And so if that was something that you chose, that sounds great. Hope it's working out for you guys. 7 years farming. That's definitely challenging, but it's rewarding. We moved out on some land. We don't farm it, but just living out in the country and kind of being apart from the city life and apart from sort of the blow and go lifestyle where you're running around all day.
Yeah.
And you don't see your family. And that's just something we wanted to not do as a family.
Yeah.
And we purposefully, and I think a lot of homeschool co-ops or even Christian schools do that. They have a 3-day week.
Yes.
And so that the family can be together as a family at the home. Or they go do something else. Some people do it because they play sports all day, every day. So there are different people here.
True.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the books.
Yeah.
C.S. Lewis's Space Trilogy. He wrote 3 books. I think the first one was published in the late 30s and then successively into the 40s. So this is just before and then during World War I. And World War I started in 1939 for us, World War II. But for England, it was 1939. So this is just on the cusp for them and then into that. And the first book is called Out of the Silent Planet. Okay,
I got it right here. That's just in case.
The second one is Perelandra. And the third one is That Hideous Strength.
Yes.
What we're going to do in this podcast is just go and do an overview of the books, overview of the Space Trilogy, and maybe about 25 minutes for each one or something like that, and talk about why we like them, what Lewis is saying, what's the value in these, who should read them, those sorts of things. So for instance, people love Lewis in the Christian world and outside of it, and they often think his fiction is for children. And we were just talking before we started recording that maybe these books aren't all for children.
Yeah.
And we should definitely watch out, especially the last book.
Yeah.
So anyway, the first book is called Out of the Silent Planet. Can you give us an overview of what this book is about, and then we'll dive into it more deeply?
Yeah, just a kind of a brief overview. He's kind of he's like a word guy, like a literary guy. The term is philologist, but it's I think like just words. Like, he knows words. I mean,
the history of languages.
Yeah, and I think of etymology, which is like the history of words. And I know it's similar, but anyway, yeah, he's like a literary guy, and he knows all these languages. And the thing that on the first 2 books, it's funny. There's the thing that strikes me is the setting, and it feels like a warm place, a place you want to be. And I've heard that C.S. Lewis hated cars because he liked to walk. And I feel like he really tries to open both of the first 2 with walking, and then with the subway, and he's going to his friend's house in Perelandra. And, it's like this long, and it almost made, I'm like, I never understood that. And that it kind of made me understand, like, that travel and how you kind of you become accustomed to that place. And it feels like kind of a world you want to be in versus kind of the chaos of the beginning of the third book. But anyway, yeah, he's walking and he runs into he's trying to figure out how to get to the next town, and stops at this house. This lady's looking for her son. He keeps going, and then he's like, all right, I'm going to try and stay in this house. He breaks in basically, and this boy's there. That from the first house, and it's actually, and they're like kind of messing with him. He's like, what's going on? Anyway, it's one of his friends and this scientist, and they basically drug him and kidnap him and go into space. That's kind of the brief intro to that book.
Yeah, so the main character is a guy named Ransom, and he's Dr. Ransom, and he gets kidnapped essentially by 2 guys, and they take him into outer space. One guy's name is Weston, and the other guy's name
Divine
is...
or Devine?
I'm forgetting the name. Divine or Devine, yeah, something like that. They take Ransom into outer space, and they have this interesting spaceship thing, and you have to kind of just excuse the technology here. It's not like a hard science book where they're trying to explain how it works. It's just, you got to just understand that they just get to outer space. Yes. And then they go to this planet, and the planet is called Malacandra, or Malacandra, and it's essentially Mars. That's what it is. And then Lewis has some adventures there. He actually ends up splitting up with those two guys and goes on all these different adventures of discovering the planet, discovering the creatures that live there, and making contact with them. And there's a lot of philology elements to it where he learns the language. So this is something I read in some letters where Lewis and Tolkien talk to each other about this, because in almost all fantasy or sci-fi, the person who's traveling to this new place, there's a problem of language. Like, how do you learn the language? And almost every story solves it by just, you just learn it.
Yeah.
After being there for a few months, you just learn it, but they don't explain how. So I found that interesting that Lewis actually explained accurately how learning a language happens. But what is the purpose of Ransom on Malacandra? Like, what is he doing there? What is the purpose of the story? He's on Malacandra. I know how it ends. The reader might or may not know how it ends, but what is his purpose there as he's walking around this planet?
Well, I mean, it starts out he's trying to get away from these crazy guys who he thinks might be trying to sacrifice him to some, to some weird creature that he saw.
Okay, yeah,
you know, right. and then he ends up kind of befriending this weird, kind of otter-looking, hairy, whiskered creature who's like 6 foot tall.
Yeah.
And that's what you're talking about with the language development and stuff.
Right.
And I guess he's just trying to survive, but then he becomes, it's almost like he starts to really like the place, and he learns this language and he goes on he even kind of goes on an adventure with these guys. And I guess, is that what you're talking about? Or are you talking about more of at a meta level kind of?
Yeah. Right. Like just what's happening on Malacandra. He goes out and he meets the Hross creatures. Yeah. That's what they call themselves. They have like a hard H in the front of every word almost that they say. And
I wondered if that was like a huh or like a
yeah, I don't know. Right. Yeah, so he meets these people and then he goes on adventures with them. And it is pretty cool. Lewis describes Malacandra very vividly. So it is sort of an adventure. But there's also a lot of philosophical, theological discussions that they have about what's going on. It's Lewis, I think more so than any sci-fi author that I've read, he really does blend in theology and myth into this world, into the outer space, more than anybody else. A lot of sci-fi, you just go into outer space and there's no God, there's no religion, there's no mythology, there's no spirituality. If it is, it's just kind of fake and it's like over there in the corner. For Lewis, it's very potent. Did you notice any themes like that in the story as well?
Well, I mean, I almost like the way he talks about the Hross, his buddy, and I even wrote down like it's Hayoy or the guy's name. Mm-hmm. The way that they record things in kind of it's almost like he doesn't belittle poetry, but he's talking about how these people just like they're very poetic and they sing and it contrasts it with like the makers, the crafty guys, the Triggy or the Phil Triggy or whatever, and then the intellectuals. And it seems to me, that if you were to try and back up and see some of these themes, that it's like one, he's explaining sort of the beauty of a hierarchical society that knows its place, and even like the intellectual Sorn, the super tall 15-foot intellectual guys, they're super intelligent, but they don't have that grit in their soul. I'm a songwriter wannabe, and they don't, they don't try to write poetry.
That's
they don't try to write works.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, we let the harass do that.
Right.
And then we come up with, things for these guys to make, but we don't make it. They make it.
Yeah.
And that's actually one thing, once you kind of learn about, once you realize our society's been flattened a little bit, and then you kind of pull that back and see that there is a hierarchy, a natural, God-given hierarchy that, like, I think he wanted Malacandra to be a, like, sort of contrasting it with Thulcandra, which we find out is Earth, is sort of like a well-ordered, aged place that's been through its full cycle of, development, and now it's sort of at the end, and even at the end where the water is way down in the bottom of these bottomland things, it's still, like, sort of ordered and beautiful in that sense.
Yeah, it's like the fall didn't happen on Malacandra. It happened on Thulcandra, which is Earth. Earth is the silent planet, by the way. Earth is the silent planet. Ransom is the man he comes out of the silent planet. Ransom does. He comes to Malacandra, and I'll explain why this planet is silent later on. Or maybe we won't, for the reader's sake. Just let it be.
I was going to say, are we gonna let that drop?
Maybe not. But it's the silent planet. But the point is, Earth is fallen. There's evil on Earth. There's a lot of problems on Earth because of the evil. However, in Malacandra, you're making a good point here. I didn't think about this. There's a hierarchy, maybe not a hierarchy in every, like, the purest absolutist sense, but people are the creatures are different, and and it's okay that they're different. They're actually living in harmony together, even though they are kind of like the Hross live over there, the Soren live over there. And the other, I can't pronounce their names, like the little Triggy.
Phil Triggy. I said Phil Triggy.
Okay, Phil Triggy. I just called them Triggies.
There you go, Triggy.
Yeah, but you're making a good point. They all had their own roles, and they lived separately, and it was completely fine. Yeah, that's a really good point. And so you can have hierarchy, you can have separation, all of these things, and it's not evil. It's not
and it
bad.
seems like it's actually what you're supposed to, like, it's something you want to pursue. Everybody it's like not to each according to their ability or whatever.
right
let's go there. But it's like, what are you good at? Hey, do that to the glory of God, and like, I think that's that theological underpinning you're getting at, which I think comes up. It's very lightly touched on. He's not explicit,
right?
Maybe similar to Narnia. I'm not sure if you can make that comparison, but
yeah, he does have. I think the spiritual aspect is present throughout the entirety of the series, but it grows in the novels, especially in Perelandra, and at the end of That Hideous Strength, it's definitely there. I think, though, that Ransom, the main character in Out of the Silent Planet, he makes this journey to try to figure out what in the world's going on, because he was kidnapped and brought to this foreign planet. He doesn't understand what's happening. Yeah. And the guys who kidnapped him, he knew one of them, and that, like you said, they were trying to perhaps sacrifice him to some creature. Those guys were confused, very much so. Right. One of them in particular has this ideology towards the end of the book where he actually gives this he's interacting with one of the kind of divine kind of beings of the planet, and the being is questioning, I think it's Weston, one of the evil men. He's questioning Weston. What are you doing here? Why are you on my planet? What are you wanting? And why shouldn't I kill you now? And Weston starts to give his response as to what he's doing. And can you talk about that a little bit? Like, what's Weston's ideology? Like, clearly, Lewis is critiquing this ideology. What is it, though?
Well, I feel like he doesn't. I thought it was a very good steel man of this sort of. It's sort of the. It's the conquering. Kind of the conquering, like, we're going to take everything and we're going to make it for us. Yeah. And he actually portrays that. Like, I actually identified with some of that. Like, hey, I want this to be for my people. I want it, to solve this problem. Yeah. Columbus Day was earlier this week. Like, I like to think of him as wanting to solve a problem, and he was very Christian in his writings and things. And I think of in a similar way, Weston has that kind of that's why I say it's actually a really good steelman of that ideology. But where it becomes broken is it's exploitative, and it's more like instead of milk the cow and take care of it, it's more like, take all the milk and kill the cow.
Yeah.
Or, it's sort of like wipe off your feet and move on. And it's a very twisted, and as we see, that's part of his criticism of maybe that field or all of those fields that try to become God or try to think that like he's standing there in front of this creature that's sort of the head of this planet, like the not God, but like sort of maybe the main angel or whatever, the
like
organized and spiritual whatever, and he's so brazenly brash, like I'm better than you, and this guy's just like holding back.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I'm fixing to take you out, fool.
I read some commentary about this book, actually about the whole series, and a lot of people say that Lewis was criticizing H.G. Wells' writing.
Yeah.
H.G. Wells.
He mentions H.G. Wells, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. He mentions
it in an aside.
Yeah. And just really quickly, H.G. Wells and other men during this time, and again, H.G. Wells just wrote some fiction, several books of science fiction, but he wrote a big book of history. He was a very important man. And his ideas essentially were that the human race, the highest thing that anyone can do is further and advance the human race. That's what we need to be doing. And if we have to destroy nature in that process, if we have to devour lands and devour resources, if we have to go to other planets and colonize those planets. I know that sounds ridiculous today because we're 100 years after all of this, and it's like a trope that's played out. But Elon Musk still talks like this. He's not.
It is similar to Elon, yeah.
Yeah, I thought about Elon. He's not so much saying we have to build this new man who overcomes past morality, and we have to get past the old tradition. He doesn't talk like that, but people back then did. And people, for instance, look at Hitler as someone who quintessentially, supposedly, wanted to destroy the world, and he wanted to just transcend morality and impose a new man on the earth. Actually, almost all intellectuals wanted to do that, and they wanted to do it globally, and they were thinking about doing it cosmically also. Like, we need to go out and colonize other planets, and man has a right to do that. The day belongs to the strong. The weak are going to fall, and let them suffer and die. This was being spoken by upstanding professors in England. This wasn't just something Hitler supposedly said or tried to do.
Right.
People were doing this and talking about this everywhere. And so basically, this Weston guy, his ideology is we need to come here to Mars and conquer it. And he says to this being, your creatures are dumb. They're stupid. You haven't invented anything. You don't have any technology. You don't have any power. We can travel across the stars now because we have the technology. We can impose ourselves on you, and we have a right to come colonize this planet until we use all the resources up and then hop somewhere else. So it's sort of this global imperialism that Lewis is critiquing.
Right. Galactic as well.
Yeah, galactic imperialism. Right. I was thinking of people like Spengler, Oswald Spengler. I was thinking of Nietzsche. I was thinking of Karl Marx. I was thinking of the Germans. I was thinking of Stalin too, though, talking about a new man, and we have to liquidate things and destroy. This is, again, not an isolated idea. So what's funny, though, is as Weston is saying all this at the end of the book, he has to speak kind of in a blunt language because he hasn't fully learned the language. So,
yeah, it sounds bad.
Yeah, so at the end, he's trying to talk about how Weston is trying to talk about how he's this new man, how he's a higher man, but he can't articulate himself. So all he's saying is, me, big man, me, strong man. He's talking like a caveman as he's saying
like a
it.
toddler. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's really funny. It's hilarious.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but so Lewis really criticizes that. I think Ransom finds that his purpose perhaps in being brought there. In fact, Ransom finds that he wasn't just kidnapped. This actually happened on purpose. He was called to come there.
Yeah.
And so he's serving a purpose now, which is to make sure that these guys don't achieve their end. And that Mars or Malacandra can establish communications with Thulcandra, the silent planet. The planet's been silent for so long.
Planet. Yeah, and it does kind of set up the next book.
Yeah. Perelandra.
Which he doesn't get there by science.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So the next book is called Perelandra. What's that about, and how does he get there?
Yeah. Well, and just like I was saying in the first one, it's this long. It's sort of this long, but still kind of warm. But it feels like it's getting darker. You know.
Yeah, it definitely is
intro,
a little darker.
And it's actually Lewis, right? He's traveling to go meet him or whatever.
Right. Yeah, and Lewis writes himself into the second book.
Yeah, which it feels like a fourth wall break. You know, they talk about in TV.
Yeah.
But I feel like he kind of does that.
It's actually a trope for fantasy books or myth books.
Okay.
To write it as a traveler. So I'm just writing down someone else's journeys. I'm just writing this down. Tolkien kind of does this a little bit in his Lord of the Rings stuff. Sometimes, like, I'm just jotting this down. Someone else went on a journey, and that person's telling me, and I'm just writing it down. And that's kind of how Lewis pitches himself in the second book. So it is kind of breaking the wall of like believability, but
it is a common trope.
Yeah, it's common.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I haven't read a whole lot of books like that, I guess, outside of Lewis, but that does make sense. But yeah. So this next one, I guess he's traveling in a coffin, and some of these what do you call it? These, I think the El Deal, that's kind of his name for like angels.
Yeah, the El Dilla or something.
Being.
Yeah,
different than the being on Malacandra, but they kind of go. It's almost the way he talks about it is like they're on a different plane and they can kind of move about, and he can kind of talk to him somehow, and that's sort of his. You know, he's getting enlightened, or I don't know if that's probably not the right term actually, but and so he gets transported to this massive planet, filled with water that. Each, like, the waves are so huge that, you know, they look like mountains, and he's riding these islands around. To me, the visual kind of the first book was really cool. Yeah. But the second book was like, I want to live there.
I feel the same exact way. The exact same way. He's very
and he gets younger.
He's very descriptive. Yeah. But Mars, it's an older planet, and it doesn't have much longer to live. And
feels tired.
They actually say, Weston, you're an idiot, because if you wanted to colonize Mars, we're going to be dying out soon. But Perelandra is brand new. And the riding the waves. So basically, it's mostly water, a water planet, but there are these islands of floating, like, matted turf with trees, and everything is fresh and brand new and luscious in every single way. And it inspires health in the body and in the mind, in the soul, just being there. But they're undulating on the waves, and so you have to kind of ride them.
You got your sea legs on steroids.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Ransom doesn't know why he was sent there. He just knows that he had to go there because one of these El Dilla things told him, I'm going to bring you there, you're going to go. And so Ransom gets shipped off, and he wakes up on this island, or this planet. What are some of his experiences on this planet?
Well, so I think he's actually told at the beginning to maybe remove his clothes. So he shows up in the buff, and he's walking around. You know, it's very warm, and he just gets exhausted, tired, and he'll just lay down. And then it will be super dark for long periods. Yeah. And then it'll be super light. And it's just very, I think it's a huge planet. And so it turns in at kind of a different time frame. And it's just very different in every way. It's very wet, warm. and he has to get strong enough and kind of adjusted enough to be able to even walk.
Yeah.
And it's an undulating,
That takes
is a good
a while.
word.
Yep.
On these island matted plant, island turf deals.
Yeah.
And so he ends up seeing a woman on another island.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he ends up trying to get over to her.
Yeah.
And he almost gets like taken away because the water is insane.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm not that good a swimmer. And
Right.
he ends up getting over to her, and kind of starts figure out who she is. And she actually speaks the language. I think it's called Old Solar is what he kind of figures out as the name of
Old
it.
Solar. Everybody speaks that across the universe or something, apparently. Yeah, he goes over. What's interesting is that he starts off as this professor, and you could imagine the physique or lack thereof of a professor. But by the end of his time on Perelandra, he comes back, and his hair and his beard and his physique have completely changed because of the nature of the planet, the youth of it.
Glow about him.
Yes. The whole story, except for the nasty part with that really bad character who shows up. Other than that, the whole story, like you said, I would like to go live there. It sounds like an amazing place.
Or at least like a retreat, I don't know. It feels like your daily rhythms would be like walk around, eat fruit, go to sleep.
Right.
On that planet.
Yeah.
I don't know. It would get old, but then again, I guess maybe not. It's like, wow, this is great.
Yeah.
I just ate. I'm tired.
Yeah, you get to ride dolphins. You get to run around.
Yeah, I was going to say, at some point, he figures out, man, these dolphins kind of listen to me. I'll just ride these around.
Yeah. It's awesome. It's amazing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And the lady he meets, I think this is very important. This is a brand new planet. So, listener, if you have not read the book, just kind of think. Lewis, he is writing not just sci-fi, he's actually writing things from a deeply Christian worldview. What happens when a planet starts? What do you think happens? Well, we had our Adam and Eve. And then there was a temptation and a fall. And before that, everything was pure and perfect. Perfect health, perfect beauty and strength. Think of Adam's mind. He was able to name all the animals day one, get married day one. This is incredible ability. Well, he meets this woman, and she's green, like an emerald. And
That's
of course,
right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, and of course, nobody on this planet has invented clothing yet, so et cetera, et cetera. And she's unfallen too. This is the interesting thing. And he talks about he goes through a lot of detail about her countenance, her smile, her eyes, her mind, unfallen, untouched by sin. And he describes over and over and over how it's impossible to communicate this to us because we've never seen, other than in Christ long ago, we have never seen an unfallen face. We've never seen a face that has never known evil, that has never been deceived, that would never try to betray you, that would only speak truth and honesty, and never has a second guessing thought in the back of it. It's amazing to go through the psychology of an unfallen being, and Lewis does that with this green emerald lady. He calls her the lady.
I was telling somebody, I've read quite a few of his nonfiction books, but not all of them. But I felt like each one I've read shows up better and sharper in this narrative style, and I feel like he incorporates them. And in this one, I was reminded of The Weight of Glory. Just like what you're saying, like it's indescribable, and yet he tries his best. And it's like, but I can't even tell you, like that was kind of that part, just amazing. It's heaven-like, unfallen.
What does he say in The Weight of Glory?
The Weight of Glory, I honestly read that first 15 pages 100 times, or maybe even less than that. But basically, he says, eternity is like, or he says it like this, that feeling you get when you watch an amazing film or listen to a beautiful song, or your first kiss, the love of your life, all these amazing events, they're just an echo of eternity. They're a shadow. And so take that, and we're literally only the copy and the cheap copy is what we get. And so, he's trying to describe glory. And, he goes on and on with all these different examples. But I remember walking out of movies and just being like almost upset when I would get into the parking lot, especially when it was like a daytime movie. You go outside and, in West Texas, it's hot, and the asphalt almost smokes, the black tar on the parking lot. And I was just like, almost like, man, I just want to go back into that movie. Like, that seemed like a way better place.
Yeah.
And that was that feeling I was reminded of. And he's like, that best feeling you've ever felt, like an amazing story, like getting married, all these different big lifetime events. He's like, that's just a little echo of eternity, And I felt like that was well represented all throughout Perelandra, because it's just like, it produces that yearning. That's another thing, is that yearning, that longing you feel is, part of God put it in us, so that when we see these things on earth, the creation, we will make us want to worship the Creator rather than creation, because we know what's so much better to come. Anyway, little aside on Way to Glory. I'll have several of those, examples with other books as we go, because I told somebody, if you want to get to learn about, what he talks about in his nonfiction, just read his fiction, because it's potent, and we remember him. We remember him in a little bit better, the narrative.
Yeah, he actually says for That Hideous Strength that it's a narrative of his book called The Abolition of Man. So he just literally says, I put this in a story.
Yeah.
So we can talk about that when we get there, though. But you're right.
I know. Yeah, let's. Don't get me started.
Okay. Time out on that one. Let's go back to Perelandra. Okay. Perelandra is a new planet. Well, it's actually not a new planet, but life on it is new.
Yeah.
The life on it is brand new, and it's just beginning in that sense. Though they actually do say this is just beginning.
And it's Venus, right?
That's right. It's Venus. Yeah. So Lewis
kind of learned that at some point.
Well, this is very fascinating, though, because Lewis, in his sci-fi, he weaves in all of classical mythology and Christian doctrine. So Mars and Venus. And he talks about this in the stories when Ransom finally meets the angel god thing of Mars and the one of Venus. He sees them, and they look. It dawns on him, though, afterwards. Mars looks like a man of war, and Venus looks like a feminine figure, and it hits him, and he starts to think, are all our classical myths actually just real? But in the universe, is it real? And they kind of tell him back and say, we are older than you think, than even your myths. It's just that we had experiences and we did things long ago, and you humans, the knowledge of us in the universe, it's like it trickles down and filters down into the worlds somehow.
Yes.
I don't know how, because Lewis doesn't explain it perfectly, but somehow the knowledge of these things go into the world and people start to reinterpret it. But it's like he basically takes classical mythology and Christianity and blends it and puts it in outer space.
Well, and like a true medievalist, right? Have you like The Medieval Mind of C.S. Lewis, or The Discarded Image is another one.
Yeah.
Like they were doing that when I think, was it Aquinas was doing that with Aristotle, like he was taking a lot of their stuff and like, all right, how does this fit? And I think, there's a guy out of Houston, his name is Louis Marcos, and he kind of does a lot of that, it's classical education, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's that like these myths had a truth in them.
Yeah.
And because we're all descended from Noah or Adam or Noah. And so they got a piece of it. And that's, I love that example because it's all over.
Yeah. Lewis doesn't go into outer space to escape the myth or to escape Christianity, which is what I think some sci-fi people do. You go into outer space and myth is gone, Christianity, religion is gone. But for Lewis, you just jump right back into it even more.
Yeah, so he talks about like, looking up and how pre Copernicus or pre Galileo maybe, everybody would see like heaven, and then we look up now and we see like rocks,
Wow.
And I do feel like, that ancient way to look at, like he describes that so well. And like you just said, I mean, I think that may be the best thing that he does is he makes it seem alive as you go into outer space. Whereas, like he takes our foundational myths and stories and he ties them in so that it still feels like it's kind of grounded and anchored. Whereas you're talking about other sci-fi, it's just kind of like this, it's a dark, cold, bottomless, endless nothing.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. In Lewis's sci-fi, in Lewis's outer space, you feel like you've entered into not an empty space, but a space full of life, so much life that it would kill you if it touched you. And it tries not to touch you because your little bitty embodied thing can't handle the amount of life that's out here. Not just spiritual, ethereal life, but life in a different way. Yeah. And it actually is the case that our planet is the silent planet because of various reasons. And again, we're kind of leaving that out for now for you to go discover, the listener. But it's super fascinating. Good. Yeah.
And it comes up a little bit in the third one, but I was going to say, that's kind of like the Great Divorce, where they get off and they're not strong enough to handle it, and they have to get stronger to make that long walk, and their feet it's so sharp and clear, and they can't handle it, or like Moses in his covered face. It's just like there's some things we just can't.
Wow.
I mean, we want it so bad, but it's also terrifying glory.
Wow. That's actually really good, man. Man, I didn't make all these connections. I'm glad you came on to make these connections for me. This is good.
Well, I seriously think, and we'll get to some more, because in this book, let's keep going in the story because they'll come up.
Yeah, Perelandra. So what happens? He meets the woman, they talk, and he kind of explains himself to her, and they have a conversation, and then he experiences fruits and things that blow his mind when he eats them, and clears his head, and he sees things new. How does the story progress from here?
Well, at some point, she starts telling it, like he sees land and it's fixed. It's called fixed land or something like that. It's not moving with the water. Yeah. And he's talking with her. She's very just, I don't know a good way to put it, but she's just kind of unconcerned and just a very innocent way, just like an untainted way, like you said, unfallen.
Yeah.
And so she's like, this, the head dude of the planet who I see sometimes told us not to go on fixed land. We find out she has a king, but he's out, he's wandering about, and she's not concerned. But she's like, we're not supposed to go on this fixed land. And he's kind of asking her, and the whole book, I think, is there's so much talking, and yet there's so much descriptive language as well. It's like a ton of both.
It's rich,
but it's super rich. There's pages and pages on end of just describing the planet, and then there's pages and pages on end of these back and forths between her, and then they go on the fixed land, and they see this crashed ship, and a little dinghy. Or I don't know, that's probably not the right word. A little
dingy
boat. Do you say dingy?
I don't know what to call it. It's a ship.
I always said dinghy because of an old movie, but I can't remember which one. But it may be,
it's
anyway.
A boat.
Yeah, a little boat. Yeah. A little skiff.
A skiff, there you
go. But we're getting into our nautical terms. But so then they run into this guy, which turns out to be Weston, the scientist. He's come back by himself now, but he's different.
Yeah.
He's not the same, and there's something pretty off about him.
Yeah.
And that kind of introduces us to that next part of this interaction with them. And he sleeps on the land. This is one of the kind of the real descriptive parts. He sleeps on the land, and he wakes up. Like every morning he wakes up on this turf, on these floating islands that move, and he feels like amazing.
Yeah.
And he sleeps on the land, and he's like, old man.
Yeah.
He wakes up, I can't move, I'm stiff.
Right.
I'm like, man, I can relate to that. And so they're like, and she doesn't though. She's like, oh, gotta go. Gets off, jumps on a dolphin or whatever, these little sea creatures.
Yeah.
And there's a back and forth with Weston. I don't exactly remember the full detail on it.
Yeah, Ransom meets Weston, and Weston pulls a gun on him because he tries to keep the Green Lady from seeing him. Ransom finally figures out why he's been brought there. Like, why am I here? There's nothing to do. It's just a perfect paradise. But then he sees that ship come out of the sky and land, and he thinks, oh no, please tell me not. And then yes, it is Weston. I got to stop him. I got to stop, because he knows what Weston's going to come do. Weston is going to bring evil to this environment. And we don't have to go into all the details of that because it's pretty amazing what happens. But Ransom is correct, essentially, and he tries to stop the meeting of the Green Lady and Weston. Well, he can't, because they both run and she follows him, and she's like just as fast or faster than him. And then she ends up going away, like you said, because she can't sleep on the island. But Weston and he slept on the island. And then Weston, I'm not sure how far we can explain the story here without giving things away.
No,
it's difficult.
There's some big things.
Weston is not himself, let's just say that. And there's something else going on.
Yeah.
Very much. So you didn't mention this, I didn't mention this, but the Green Lady, the main god of all of the worlds, talks to her directly, kind of like God did with Adam in the garden. So as Ransom is talking to the Green Lady, she says, oh yes, Meleldil says that that's what this and that means. And Ransom says, he talks to you, you hear him? And she's like, yes, of course, all the time, because she's unfallen. He talks to her casually all the time. Well, just so, Weston is in communication with things, and maybe even the other way around. But Ransom kind of figures this out too.
Different things.
Yeah, different things, bad things. And Ransom figures this out and actually tries to stop him. He takes his gun away, but the story moves forward, and Weston goes to one of these floating islands somehow. And like he is able to commandeer one of these dolphins, and he goes and meets the lady. And he spends a great part of the book is basically Weston trying to break the mind of this woman, this lady, this pure, innocent, never sinned, never doubted the main god, never questioned her husband. And he tries every trick in the book to throw at her for days and days and days to try to get her to sin.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating the things that he does. I don't remember all of them, but I do remember one main one was that he told her a bunch of stories of strong, powerful women who were mistreated by men, misunderstood by the world and oppressed, but they rose up and conquered anyway, and they made a name for themselves, and they changed history, and they were strong. And the Weston figure keeps telling the lady, like, shouldn't you be a great figure in history? And he actually is wanting her to disobey Meleldil by sleeping on the land. I think that's what the main thing is. That's like the forbidden fruit for her is you shall not sleep on the land, on the mainland.
Right.
And then Weston says, you know, has he really said that? You know, is that a reasonable? And he goes into like this is where I thought really the Nietzschean critique comes out, I think, for me in this book, because it's not merely that you should do this because it might be fun. It's that you should disobey Meleldil, he says, because in doing so, you will become a higher level of human, a higher level, not human, but a higher level of being. You will be like God, not just because you ate the fruit and it made you wise, but because you stepped out of Meleldil's will. You're just his slave right now. You're not fully alive. Right. You're not fully a woman. You can achieve the next stage of greatness by taking hold of your own destiny. And this is sort of that late 1800s, early 1900s atheistic rhetoric of the new man. Yeah. We're going to propel forward and achieve greatness and grab the reins of the universe for ourselves and turn fate in our direction. And he starts talking like this, like disobedience to God is actually what he wants you to do. He wants you to disobey him so that you can become like him and grow. He doesn't want you to remain an infant. Like, what if he put this thing here on purpose so that you would disobey him? Like, and he's not going to tell you to do that. You have to figure it out on your own. And it gets into a lot of this. It's almost like Satan in Milton's Paradise Lost. If you've ever read that, if the reader's ever read that, Milton really takes Satan's disobedience to God, like the rebellion. It wasn't, according to Milton, Satan disobeyed God not merely because he wanted to be God, like I want power. It was like this heroic thing. It was like the greatest thing anybody could ever do is to look the most powerful being in the face and shake your fist at him. That's greatness. That's defiance. That's courage. Like, what act takes more courage than that, right? I committed the greatest act in the world when I disobeyed God. That's what Satan was saying. And so I became the greatest being in that respect. And all of you are just slaves, undeveloped. As long as you're obeying Christianity, your mom, morality, your boss, whatever, you are, or your husbands, especially for women, as long as you're just obeying your husband, obeying your father, if you're not married, you are not a full woman as you could be if you would just break all of these things. And that's what Satan, it's pretty incredible, this conversation.
Yeah, and she brings up what's crazy is the whole time she has the perfect answer because she's so innocent and unfallen that it's just like the most natural thing. And like what he's saying makes no sense at the beginning. Her response is perfect. Yeah. And a lot of times, like you said, she's like, well, I need to ask the king.
That's right.
You know, like, oh, that's something I need to ask the king about. And he's like, no, it'll be better for you to not, he wants you to not ask him. And at first she has like the most perfect response. Well, it's like, we're one, you know, like, why would I not ask him?
Right.
And, you know, he's my leader. And, and then slowly he starts to chip away.
Yeah.
Right. Does. And then her answers are more, well, they're a little less certain. And they're not quite as a strong rebuttal. Yeah. And I think Ransom starting to notice like even my questions early on in my conversations kind of exposed her to just shock. Like at certain times she would be like, why? Like she would ask why to the silliest things. And you realize it was just so foreign to her. And he's like, I'm even like stealing and ruining some of her innocence. And I'm just
accidentally,
I guess there's no such thing as like a neutral.
Yeah. Ransom tries to answer Weston, but Weston is being, his mind at this point is beyond Ransom, and everything Ransom says is being turned for ill purposes. So he just shuts up. And what I find interesting is that the solution to all of this, like the woman achieves, she succeeds where Eve failed. However, what I find interesting is that Weston was never fully answered. Like all of his questions weren't answered. It was just that Ransom decided, I need to fight him. Like that was the solution. The solution wasn't, let's just keep arguing until we answer all of his questions, because this guy at this point, he's not sleeping, Weston. He's going to keep arguing forever and ever and ever. And Ransom says, I'm just going to kill him. And essentially, he starts fighting him, and he gets like this superhuman strength for a bit, and he breaks his body. And then the guy, even though he's kind of broken, he flees and he chases him, and eventually
running on a broken foot or whatever, and broken leg. Well, and I was going to say, don't forget too, one of the reasons why he decides this is arguing is somewhat futile already, but Weston never sleeps. Yeah. And we kind of figure out why he doesn't need to.
Yeah. Right.
You know?
Yeah.
But
so
he's like, I have to sleep. He falls asleep. He wakes up. They're talking. He's like, oh, I've lost ground.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Before
they're
talking. Like, all right, I have to stop him.
Right. Yeah. Because the woman's will is being worn down, even though she's innocent, and she can't just keep resisting forever. I think I'm not sure if Lewis meant this, but the lesson that I'm taking is, there's only so much arguing you can do with evil. At some point, you have to fight it. You have to just, pardon my French, you have to kick its ass. I mean,
Yeah.
you have to fight it. And that's what he does. The solution
Yeah.
here is violence. Like, what should Adam have done? Should he have dialogued with the snake? Or should he have actually just broken the snake in half and banged it against a tree and said, no, we're not doing any of this. And we're not even arguing about it. It's not even an argument. We're not coming up with reasons. We're just obeying God, and we're going to fight evil. Anyway, that's what happens for Lewis in this book.
Yeah, and it's around here, we have a lot of diamondback rattlesnakes, and so we kill a lot of snakes. And typically it's good if you all you need is a shovel.
Yeah.
But he didn't have any of that.
Yeah.
That was one of those things that it's like, is this ever going to end? I mean, it was such a whoa, this is crazy.
Right. And then the rest of the book, I think my favorite part of the book, other than the floating islands, is when he chases Weston. Weston flees. He chases Weston. They get into some cave. He goes through the cave.
Yeah.
That part is weird, but he comes out of the cave and he's at the top of a mountain. And the rest of the book from that point on is just, I'm in love with the book at that point, because it's just, he's describing these crystal mountains and semi-opalescent, clear, translucent rocks and these trees with wavy leaves and things and big, huge views. It looks like the ocean is coming up to meet you because you're so high up. And it's extremely fascinating. All of the animals, and then the farewell at the end. Anything else in this book before we move on to That Hideous Strength?
Well, I was going to just point out, the other book that's referenced, one of his nonfiction would be Screw Tape.
Screw Tape,
during the dialogues, and
yes,
a lot of points are straight out of Uncle Screw Tape's book.
Wow, really?
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's just this. A lot of them are just, hey, well, maybe you're just tired, or it would just be, it's arguing how Satan tempts us, and a lot of times it's not that smart. It's playing at our weaknesses, and then it's and anyway, that was all over those dialogues between Weston and the woman.
Yeah,
but
that's good, man. And you the reader, get tired of the dialogues. Like, you're tired of them.
Yeah, they just go on, and he keeps falling asleep.
Right. Yeah.
He has to sleep. We're human. We got to sleep.
So he makes it out of there. The Lord, the king, and the lady of that realm are blessed. They are received as the rulers of that realm. And it is sort of like, what would have happened to Earth if Adam and Eve hadn't had fallen?
Yes.
And what would it have looked like with the animals even? And the angels that were sent to help and govern the world? What role would they have taken? Lewis explores all of that, especially towards the end, when the Lord and the lady are given their commission, so to speak. And it's quite a fascinating scene. It's on the high peak of a mountain. It's wonderful. And then Ransom, they say, thank you very much for basically helping enlighten the lady so that she withstood in her hour of temptation, and you rid us of the temptation. And so they honor him highly and then send him off, and he goes back. All right, so That Hideous Strength is the third one. The preface to That Hideous Strength says two things that are important, I think. One is, you don't have to read the former two to read that one, the last one.
Yeah.
But it's good to, because Ransom is there, and it's about the supernatural. But it's on Thulkandra, it's on Earth. So if you've already read the first two, you're kind of primed and ready for the third, because the third starts off kind of slow and dry. It's like college professors and business and stuff for several chapters, and you're thinking, okay, this isn't very exciting like the second one was, or the third one, or the first one. So the second thing is, Lewis says that he did this because this is how, he calls it a fairy tale. He calls That Hideous Strength a fairy tale, or maybe a myth, I can't remember. But he said, the reason I call it that, said Lewis, is almost all fairy tales start off in the normal world, and then the character, like the little Timmy, walks out of his house, and and then encounters fairies, the supernatural. And he says that's how you should read this book. It starts off, everything's normal people, in fact, extremely normal and mundane. And then it turns supernatural.
Yes.
Yeah, and another thing
Yes.
too, I'll say is, in the other books, the first two, I think it was actually the first, the sort of god of the world of Malacandra, of Mars, said to Ransom, don't worry, eventually things are going to happen on your world to shake up the silent nature of your world and to challenge the powers that be, and so on and so forth. So if you read the first two, you're kind of primed, and I think the second book says something like this too, like, hey, we'll see you again at the last of things. So you're kind of ready for the third one. It helps to get through some of the drier stuff in the third, in my opinion.
Well, and I think too, I talked about those first two books. The tone is warm, and even in the first book, there's like this kid who's being overworked and possibly abused, and maybe sent into space, or tested out on this time machine thing or the spacecraft. It still feels like a world you'd kind of want to live in, a more of a high trust society, and this you walk everywhere. It's just nice to be in. And the second one, especially too, even though it feels like a long trip, wow, it's so far out here to get to this cottage where he wanted me to come to help him and all this stuff. And then the third one, it feels like the silent planet. I mean, obviously on purpose. It's dry.
That's good.
It's darker, and it's boring, but also like there's something right under the surface. Just or maybe there's a lot under the surface. With tentacles, I'm doing with my hands. Rubbing them together. Something's going on, and it's not good, but it's covered up in the mundane everyday life of this Studdock, Mark Studdock. He's kind of
and then Jane, his wife,
the beginning character.
Yeah,
and his wife Jane, and they're both academics, right? And they're kind of in that world, and it seems just kind of like a world I don't want to be in. Like he's got to kind of kiss everybody's tail, and try and pretend to like these people who he really doesn't, and that's kind of the intro to the. Yeah. It feels like a completely different book, and it's also double the length.
It's long. Yeah. That's a good way of putting it. You're on the silent planet, and it feels like there's less life there, and it's dull and drab and dark and mysterious too, though. There's something going on. Basically, the plot of the whole story is that you have Mark Studdock and Jane, his wife, and there's several plots actually, but the main plot is Mark is a professor at the college that he works at, is kind of being taken over by this institute called the NICE, the National Institute for Coordinated Experiments. It sounds like the National Institute for Health or something, that we have these institutes. It's just a bureaucracy, essentially, of scientists and professionals. And their goal is the same as Weston's long ago, which is to remake humanity, to change humanity, to experiment on humans, and to propel us forward, to make a new man. There's a lot of transhumanism elements in this. I've heard people talk about that. Transhumanism, like overcoming man, surpassing man, making us immortal by doing all kinds of weird things. So anyway, that institute, but it's all secret though. Like you don't know that right away. It's secret, and they're trying to abduct people into this institute, recruit people, but nobody even really knows what it is, except that it's powerful and it's the new thing, and you have to be in it. And you very much feel like you're among a bunch of bureaucratic, managerial class functionaries, and just weak men, weak-willed men who are strivers and ladder climbers, and it's real terrible. The other plot is that Jane, Mark's wife, is having dreams that are disturbing her, horror dreams, and she had goals for herself as a woman, to be a professional woman, a powerful, or maybe not powerful, but just a professional equal to a man. As
girl boss.
Yeah.
We would use in modern
girl boss. And what she's finding is her body, her mind, her emotions are changing, and she's becoming more and more woman-like, kind of against her will. And she also finds that her dreams have some importance. I'm not sure how far we should go in explaining all of this, because it's like we're giving it's like the story is, every element of the story is something you have to unwrap and figure out. So anything we tell you is going to be doing that for you beyond what I kind of already said. So let's try to navigate further, though, without giving too much away in the book if we can.
You know, one of the things I was going to point out was you pointed out the name of this institute that's kind of, you know, at the center of the first plot. And it's funny because I should have looked this up, but I didn't. But that NICE is the acronym, and it's very Orwellian. But was this before 1984? I didn't even. What's the date of that?
I don't know when 1984 was written. I have to look and see. It might have been in the 40s, quick. So around the same time.
49.
Okay. So this is written
I guess
in the early
predate.
Yeah, it predates it by just a few years.
Yeah, just a little bit. 45.
Yeah.
So it's funny, like Lewis was Orwellian before Orwell, and that's often compared. You know, a lot of people will compare that one in Brave New World and That Hideous Strength.
Yeah.
And that's sort of a theme throughout, and you know, a lot of people say it's much better in a lot of ways.
Wow.
On the nose, at least. Especially, it's so poignant for today, right? Yeah. I mean, it's back then. I think I'm like, well, how is he seeing that?
Yes.
So early,
yeah. Right?
Because it's fully, you know, I would say manifest, but almost fully festered might be a better word today.
Yes. Yeah. It's true, because back then, 1945 is when he published it. What was happening then? Stalin and Hitler are basically brutally conquering, and even the Western powers are brutally bombing Japan and Dresden and all kinds of things. So it's sort of like the boot on the face of Orwell.
Yeah.
You know, Huxley wrote about Brave New World, where everything it's love and you're kind of forced by pleasure and passions. But Lewis said, I think this is one of Lewis's main points in the book, is that the greatest threats to humanity in our era are not actually coming from people like Hitler, like strong men rising up, and Mussolini. It's actually coming from people who are wearing white-collared shirts to work. And they speak with a soft tone. And he even says this in somewhere, I don't have the quote here, but he says something like, it's like a nasty office concern. And that's where the worst threats to humanity, to freedom, to morality, to decency, to countries, to nations, to families, they come from people who work in offices, and they have closely cut fingernails and shaven cheeks, well-lighted offices, and they never have to raise their voice, and they just do paperwork. Those are the people. And throughout the novel, it's those people who are trying to dominate and destroy humanity. But they think that they're saving humanity. They think that they're saving it. And as we go through the novel, we find out that they're actually driven by these forces, these otherworldly forces, or actually not otherworldly, they're very much of the earth, but they're not human forces.
Yeah.
But it is
well, it's funny. Yeah. Well, like they say, you know, you play with fire, you get burned. A lot of these kind of polemical satanic churches and things, and you know, a lot of times they're started by atheists, and then at some point in time they become true believers. You know, it's like, well, I thought you didn't believe in anything like that. It's like, well, you're living it. You're living it, buddy. But I was going to say, you know, we're talking about the guys with the, you know, the perfectly manicured fingernails and shaven cheeks and stuff. You know, I was thinking of Men Without Chests. You know, abolition of man. You know, which, like you said, that's probably the most famous quote from that book. Although, you know, that whole book is great, and it's short too. But you know, just to reference another one of his works where he just personifies, you know, that concept so well all throughout. That whole NICE Institute, you know, It's funny too, just to point out some things, differences between him and men and women, especially. You know, he kind of puts his head down. He pretends to like this group, and through his eyes, the way he describes them, you know, at first he doesn't really like them, and then he starts to like them more, and then they start kind of bringing him in, and he has these different tasks and things, and he's like, man, this is great. But then when they first mention like, hey, we need to meet your wife or whatever, when he's like, oh, whoa, she would hate him. And then he starts noticing all these things.
Yeah.
Which my wife talk about this a lot. You know, sort of the more intuitive, instinctual things that women just naturally notice, and men will, in our sort of more analytical and hard and chiseled kind of like everything's in a box, black and white, we might miss. Lewis does that so well.
Yeah.
You know, one of the quotes that I told my wife, you know, you're talking about how she when one of the times after she meets with the director, is who we call him, she kind of has this moment. He just kind of stuns her with the way he understands the world and its workings, and again, its hierarchy and man's place, woman's place, everybody, like how we're supposed to truly live. And she was like, you know, I was so mad because I wanted to be seen as interesting and profound, and I was always upset when people were just loved me because I was so sweet and fresh. And I memorized that little, because I'm like, you know, that's embrace that, embrace your womanly qualities, and that's a whole nother. I mean, that thread. There's so many threads. Like like, you know, and it's a longer book, but it is jam packed with so many different things we could talk about for a long time. You know.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's also the resistance. So Jane is having these dreams, and the dreams have some kind of realistic parallel or referent. And so it's not just dreaming, she's like seeing things that are happening. But the things are crazy. And I won't describe all of them, but it's, you know, she's really disturbed by this. Well, she meets some people who help her, and they turn out to be the resistance to the NICE. The NICE is trying to basically buy a piece of property that's like the heart of London, where Merlin was buried, and he's supposed to come back to life.
And that's on the back.
Yeah,
I was going to say that's on the back cover, so we're not giving anything away talking about Merlin.
Yeah, so he weaves in mythology again. Classical mythology. He talks about, in the book, King Arthur and all kinds of stuff, and Christianity. But so you have these two antagonist parties, and Jane is over here, and her husband is actually in Nice, and eventually, and he has to wake up to what's going on. And Ransom is also in the story. He is with the resistance as well. So, and things develop between that. Again, it's hard to talk about how all this resolves, because it's like an eruption of things, you know, cataclysm. As the story develops, it becomes really wild and crazy what the evil element is trying to do in order to propel humanity to its next phase by force through this transhumanist worldview that's kind of led by demonic forces. And in reality, it's rebelling against humanity, which is kind of what Jane was doing. Like, she's rebelling against her sex. And she's learning, no, I have to embrace it and be who I am. I think that's a really strong message here. Like, we can't rebel against the God-given created design of humanity and also of male and female. That's a strong theme here. Yeah.
And I think too, you know, her husband is going through something similar, and my main takeaway from this book was sort of like, not to, it's if you were to simplify it too much, you would say it's just judge a book by its cover, but more that, you know, all of his feelings about these people being just evil and wrong because they were rude and they were snarky, and they, you know, it's like, he and these are the people he wanted to saddle up with, you know?
Yeah.
That was one of the things I took away, was that, you know, like, likable people are likable people, and you know, it's like very obviously true. and bad people who are, entertaining these borderline or actual demonic forces. If they're playing with fire, they're getting burned, and they're going to burn you too. And I've been going through some things personally just in the last probably 10 years about who you associate with, and we've seen a little bit of that in the news about who you trust, and who's your people, your small group at church, or your at school or whatever, with your kids parents, friends. That really matters. People I've done business with who have burned me in the past 5 years, and I look back and I saw that, like, all the signs were there that you want to not necessarily go to the extreme of killing them like in Perelandra, but gouge out your eye, cut off your hand, cut off that relationship that you're probably going to get burned by. And all throughout I think he does the character so well, and their relationships. I think I heard you say, and maybe it was either the Tau or the Watership Down episode, but Lewis is so English, and sometimes you love it and sometimes you hate it. And I felt like this book, sort of the proper way of being, the way they are in the house with the resistance, the men and women with each other. Some things that are more classic decorum, and some things that are less. And they're like, well, he just said so that's what we're doing. He explores those relationships so well, and how, it's so clear to the reader at a certain point that, like, man, this isn't working. Why are you doing this? Why are you trying to get in with this institute that's so evil, even though it's called nice?
Right.
But that was one of the biggest things I took away. Just, I think probably because that's what I've been dealing with that in my personal life in the last 5-10 years. But.
Yeah. Wow. That's good. Yeah. That's been something that I've fallen prey to in my life. Is maybe it comes from me personally being too agreeable. I'm not sure, but I make friends really quickly with people that sometimes I shouldn't have made friends with. I should have been more careful, because that person was a bad influence. Look, I'm responsible for my own sins, my own choices, but I befriended that person, and that person just went off and did something bad, and I was with that person, and I thought, why didn't I see that coming? Why did I have a business relationship or a personal relationship with this person? And I guess the liberal mentality today, I don't mean politically, just like philosophically, culturally liberal, is like, hey, accept everybody. Just be friends with everybody. But the old way of thinking is, no, the Bible says this. Like, be careful of, the Proverbs are full of this wisdom. Be careful with your friends. Don't go with the wicked. Don't stand in the way of the wicked. Don't walk in the way of the wicked. You're going to go down with them. Their path goes to evil. It goes to ruin. You need to choose your friends carefully, your relationships. And Mark, forget his last name now, in the book, he just goes along. He goes with some of these people for a while until he realizes that he's in deep in something wrong.
Bad company corrupts good character. I mean, I think he displays that well, and also Jane and her. They're in two different cohorts or whatever. It seems like the virtue and the things that these people just kind of represent, and maybe not even, it seems like it's almost in the air. They're like, how are we kind of becoming better in a sense, or like, how am I getting more in touch in certain things? And it's like, well, you're just around them, you're living with them.
For
and
sure.
The opposite is true.
I heard someone say that this is the only book, though, even though it's kind of dark, this is the only book with a happy ending. So the other two books, their endings weren't bad, but they weren't like, oh, it's a happy ending. This book, I won't explain everything, but basically Jane and Mark, they figure out their humanity, the proper way of being human. They figure out the proper way of being male and female, and a family. I'll just kind of leave it at that. But it's actually, it's good. And I think that's one of the core messages here, again, that Lewis is trying to communicate. The problem, the tyrannies of the 1900s and the ideology swimming in that world. And even still today, we're dealing with transgenderism. We're dealing with men competing with women in sports. We're dealing with teens online who they don't know what their identity is. We're dealing with race
Gay
and
adoption. Yeah.
gay adoption. We're dealing with race and ethnicity where people are saying we need to abandon that, people embracing that. Who are we as humans? Who are we as male and female? Should we have women leaders in churches? There's like the PCA is dealing with that right now with certain types of shepherdesses and things. And
SBC also. Yeah.
Yeah, it's everywhere. So those issues are still alive today. And Lewis's main points, I think, are that the dangers are not coming from people like the left fears, for instance, right now, 2025, the left is afraid of Donald Trump. They think he's going to be a fascist or something like that. I think Lewis's point is the main threats to humanity today are not going to come from the obvious things that you're thinking. Like another Stalin is going to arise and destroy. Maybe, but what's actually happening is that you have a lot of people who work behind desks and they write policies that destroy humanity, and they get on board with something and they just kind of pressure you to do it. It's like a pressure group of friends. And the destruction of humanity, what does it look like? It looks like not destruction of humanity, but we're just trying to improve humanity. We're trying to make the world safe. You need to do this. We're trying to make you healthy. You need to do this. We're trying to surpass man's problems. There's like about a tech bros today talking about transhumanism, like blood transfusions and stem cell research, aborted fetus cell research, and we're going to overcome. I think Peter Thiel was talking about this, the Silicon Valley tech billionaire. He's talking about we're going to overcome humanity. We're going to overcome death. We're going to live beyond 130 years. It's going to happen. You have like eugenics projects. All of this is basically bound up in this project of the nice. And of course it's ruinous and it's demonic. And it ends up making, like, the funny thing in the book is the future man that they create is actually, I'm not going to give it all away, but the future man that they create, because they actually try to make one. Right. And it's like this, just like Weston in Malacandra, when he was trying to explain his philosophy, his like Nietzschean sort of overcome Superman, he was speaking in barbaric terminology, like me great, me big, me strong, me overcome you. Well, the same thing is kind of happening in That Hideous Strength. The future overman that they create is this really bastardized version, worse than a Frankenstein. It's not even in the ballpark of Frankenstein, but it's just you see it and you think, this is buffoonery, this is stupidity, this is ridiculous.
That was actually, one of the events where I realized my point of like, man, if something is ugly and disgusting,
yes,
and evil sounding, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck, man.
Yeah.
Since you gave away a little bit of the good ending, I wanted to. It's crazy. I wanted to touch on a point. There's one part where the director says something about, like, I'll kind of put it in more of our terms, like when the devil is done with his minions, he destroys them. And there's like this half a page, super. I mean, it's still Lewis's just awesome description and writing and stuff, but where one of the characters, who's actually in the first book under a different name, is kind of going back, just like he's not sure why he's running, and then he's walking. And he gets to this town, and it just literally collapses in on itself. And then as he realizes it, he's trying to leave, but it's just going so fast. And I'm like, man, that half a page, which is easy to miss, would make. I mean, I want to see that. Like, I want to see like somebody make that like a short film, because it was insane.
Wow.
But it wasn't even. It was like a blip in that story. The fight scene in Perelandra goes on for, pages and pages and pages. And this cataclysm, use the word cataclysm. So it's basically like a earthquake that collapses. The town literally collapses in on itself, and it's gone.
Yeah.
And it was sort of foreshadowing of, like, the minions will be destroyed. And I couldn't
Wow.
think of like a, other than like evil destroys itself, and sin leads to death, and certain, like, I was trying to think of like a Christian or even just sort of a folk kind of wisdom comparison. But it was. I even wrote down the little spiel by the director where he just talks about it, and then it's fulfilled in all these different ways.
Huh.
Animals, like, all these crazy things happen.
Mm-hmm.
To destroy these very evil people, and it's I'm like, whether it's of God or the devil, vengeance is God's.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. I mean, but it's such a cool, crazy part that you can just skip right over if you're just kind of like trying to finish the book, because it's like, when is this book going to end? I keep reading all these things keep happening.
Yeah.
And that was just like a random part, but
Yeah, it's crazy. The ending is absolutely wild. I mean, Lewis really brings out everything. Again, I don't want to ruin it for the reader. If you haven't read it, it's tough. What we'll do is we'll come back and do individual episodes, because there's so much we're missing. And in those episodes, the spoilers are all on the table. So we'll just talk about everything in those episodes.
So if y'all haven't read it by then, that's on you.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Man, it's been great rereading them. I've read them before, but I reread the first two and about half of the third one before this started. I couldn't get it all finished again, but
I know it's a lot.
It's been great to read them again. You get more from anything you read a second or third or fourth time, but Lewis is writing his description of the landscapes. His theology comes out so much, his philosophy, his critique of imperialism, which I thought was ironic, because during this time in the first one, Britain was an empire. So I don't know what would he have to say about that. Maybe it's in his letters somewhere, but that was interesting.
I thought the exact same thing. Yes.
Yeah, he's critiquing empire at the time when Britain was the largest empire in the world.
when we see all the, you pull out the, there was a hole and now it's been filled by something else.
Yeah.
Which arguably is much worse. I'm kind of like 100 years later. 80 years later, it's like, I wonder what he would think. But.
Yeah, right. I think there is something to that, though. Like the idea that we have a right, because we're superior, we have a right to come rule you. I mean, that kind of was the imperial mindset. Like, hey, you guys are savages, you're not Christians, you're sacrificing your wives and children. We got to put a stop to that. We have a right to do that, because we're not because we inherently are better than you maybe, but our culture, our religion, our civilization is, and we got to stop this. I think there's like a compassionate view here. It could be.
Yes.
As opposed to like, hey, we're going to show up and just brutally annihilate all of you because you're not even worth breathing the air, which is kind of Weston's view. Weston kind of had that view of like, you're not, this planet is not yours, it's ours. And we're going to come do that to you. And the same thing with the nice. The nice is like, hey, humans are here for our experimentation. We're not going to tell you. We're going to lie to the public about what we're doing while we make a new humanity, and then everybody else can just like die off or something, whatever they thought.
Well, it is like I do feel like you said, being right, and especially being right, concerning the gospel, but even just like how civilization is and certain things. And it's like but I think too, it was like somewhat benevolent, but somewhat misplaced, because I mean, look at Britain, they got too far over their skis. And, looking back now, it's like, maybe you do need to focus on focus on yourself, man.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think there's problems. I mean, Britain it lost its empire after the Second World War. And now it's basically losing its character with London is basically inhabited by people who aren't English now. I mean, completely. It's gone.
Right.
And it's probably not going to change for hundreds of years. It's going to be like that for a long time. And, what does that mean for well, I guess what it means is don't become an empire in the first place. Or if you do, you have a responsibility to keep it going, or else this thing's going to fire back in your face. I'm not sure what the solutions are. I did think Lewis, I wonder what he would think today about this, because his response to Weston in the first book was essentially from that angel thing. It was saying like, no, we need to if it's your time to die, it's your time to die. You're not going to hop to another planet, take over the resources there. You need to, value human life and all this kind of stuff, which is kind of like a tolerant view of humanity, which sounds great. What would he say today with the state of London, because we kind of backfired from that Western view and gone in the 180-degree opposite direction. And now there is no more London. Now there is no more England, perhaps. So it'd be nice if you could avoid the global cosmic colonization program, but also avoid being colonized yourself. You can remain who you are.
Yeah. That's actually one of the main things I thought about. Like you said, Lewis is so utterly English that sometimes it's sickening. But that's one thing that like is so represented in these books, and you'll look back and you'll be like, wow, now you can get a Turkish and other foods more than you can get any. Not that English food is anything great, but it's like, it's not really Cockney. It's not London. It's not England anymore. And that's one thing that's kind of cool about these books is it's so English. That I guess it's preserved in that way. Not to get too grim about it, but it feels that way a little bit.
Yeah, it is. Lewis and Tolkien, they do this. They have a very Englishness to them, especially when it comes to hoping in providence. Like Tolkien, I remember in Lord of the Rings, Frodo was thinking about killing Gollum. Wouldn't it be better to kill him? And Gandalf says, no, we have to have pity on him. Who knows? He may serve some purpose in the end. And I thought, nah, kill him. Nah, just kill him. Like that's, what is this like? Kind of, you're just like, things will work out in the end. Because there's providence, and it's like, yeah, let's just against all reason let him go. But my point in bringing this up is Lewis does this, and I think there's like this English Christian character coming out. Because Lewis does the same thing. Right. Like he doesn't kill Weston when he has the chance on Perelandra. He grabs his gun and he threw it in the ocean. And I was like, shoot him. Like you could have avoided the rest, like half of the book of problems.
That would have made a much shorter book.
Just grab him and shoot him. Because he ended up killing him anyway. After the lady was tempted. So
at great expense. At great expense. The third book, he's kind of injured.
But the idea is, let's not take life if we don't have to. It's very English and Christian morality, but like a English Christian. And it comes that way too with like the idea of the criticism of imperialism that Lewis gives. That attitude that he has against it has probably led to some of the backfiring that's happened to London, to England in the ensuing decades that Lewis wasn't around to see. I think that there needs to be something more of like, no, let Gollum live. I'm like, no, close the border. Right. We're not going to just trust like, oh, who knows what's going to, no, we know what's going to happen. We're dealing with the problem.
That pity and that apologetic kind of attitude, will come back and bite you. If it's like, to me, it's like, if it's your home, it's your house, if it's your nation, your people,
right.
I think they were so on top that they thought that something like this could never happen.
That's my thought too. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can't even imagine looking down from on high like that.
Yeah. If you're the world's greatest empire, you can kind of be afforded to think like, oh, things will work out. It's kind of like how boomers sometimes talk about jobs. Things will work out for you. Don't worry. Housing, marriage. It's like, yeah, I tried. And it worked out for me. And it's like, yeah, because you lived in the most prosperous nation, the most prosperous period in human history. Yeah. And it just worked out, right?
Yeah, we were talking about that. Like, I bought a car for $200 and I drove it for 5 years. And it's like a cash car today is like $5,000 or $6,000. Yeah. You can't even hardly get a cheap cash. It's we can't even compare. I don't care if the minimum wage was a little less. It's like it's a completely different world.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So Lewis's critique of the idea of we need to preserve the human race at all costs and destroy anybody else. His critique of that is, no, we need to. There are other values that are. He even says this. There are other values above love of kindred. They're above it. Love of kindred is actually one of the lower values. You should have pity, mercy, kindness, patience, tolerance. And I'm thinking, hey, you know what? That sounds great. It sounds wonderful. What would Lewis think today looking at the situation in England today, because those values are dominant today. And look at what it's done to London. Look at what it's done to England, to the countryside. Look at what it's done to the West. Have those virtues become tyrannical? What would Lewis say if he were around today? I don't know. But that's the message in these books. And I think it is a good message, by the way, because the imperialistic mentality isn't just imperialism alone. It's like transhumanism, and we're trying to destroy man and make life available for the new man. And we still live with a lot of that today, where massive humanity is just kind of fodder for the elites or for the transhumanists, or like the trans ideology is crazy and insane. But even Elon Musk, he's wanting to colonize Mars to continue humanity. That's exactly what Weston says. Exactly what he says.
Yeah.
We have to, and Elon Musk really, really wants to do this. Where did he get that idea? It's not new. It's old.
It's old.
And is it a pipe dream? You know, what are we really doing if we extend humanity to Mars? Are we actually extending life? Or is it something else, something weird?
Well, and I was going to say too, you know, I think Lewis, like even if he says that, were you referencing Abolition of Man, where he talks about like love of kindred, these different things, or were you just talking? That's what I was thinking. Yeah, and so I think though what plays out in these books is sort of, it's like it's the director is the man. You know, he references himself as, you know, the Pendragon. Now we're getting a little bit into the weeds, but there's clearly and like when he gets with Merlin, they're like, they dress up and they're like in their glory, you know, and they're kind of hanging out. And they're like, why are you dressed like this? He's like, he doesn't think, since I'm a king, or I'm this leader figure, that I should be dressed like a peasant or whatever. And so like, I feel like he reinforces sort of the more natural thing is like, it's not, you know, to make a sort of a random reference, it's not like Cromwell or whatever, take power and then just kind of like leave it to whatever and just not even really wield it. But it's more, you know, take over and we're gonna run this thing now. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's sort of what manifests throughout the whole book. It's sort of what's acted out is sort of that preservation of the good and the true and the beautiful and England, you know, and probably the whole world, I guess, if the Mass was going to get out to everybody else.
Yeah. Well, that's good, man. It's been a good conversation. There's a lot more we could say, and I think we'll have to do it in deep dives in the books themselves. Yeah.
That'd be great.
Well, Jordan Kirk, thanks for coming on. Enjoy Texas, and Godspeed to your farming there.
Thanks, man. We're fixing to start stripping, harvesting cotton right now. So
awesome. That's great.
I appreciate it.
All right, man. See you next time.
All right. Take care.
Thank you for listening. If you're enjoying this content, please consider supporting the show by subscribing at arslibri.substack.com. Your support enables me to produce this content. Subscribers also get bonus episodes, detailed book lists, and more.